The sexy drill movement is really about like making sexy music. Whatever you say, making it sound sexy.
New York rap has always had a sound, from the gritty boom bap of the 90s to the drill wave that took over the streets in the 2020s. Every era came with a signature energy, raw, aggressive, and unmistakably New York. But right now, something is changing, and at the center of that shift is Cash Cobain. He doesn't sound like traditional New York rap. His beats feel lighter, almost melodic. His delivery is smoother. The energy isn't built on aggression. It's built on rhythm, bounce, and a kind of effortless confidence that feels completely different from what the city is known for. And yet, it's working. Not just working, but spreading. So the question is, how did a producer with such an unconventional sound start influencing an entire scene known for doing the exact opposite? Before we break that down, make sure to like the video and subscribe, because this story isn't just about one artist. It's about how a single sound can shift an entire culture. Long before the cosigns, the viral tracks, and the growing influence across New York's rap scene, Cash Cobain was just another kid growing up in the Bronx. Born Kashmir Lavon Small on March 31st, 1998, in the Bronx, New York City. He first started making beats at a young age in his grandmother's house in New York City in the Forest Houses. He grew up in the South Bronx and moved to Queens as a teenager. Being inspired by drill, trap, and Jersey club music, he taught himself how to produce music using virtual DJ and FL Studio, and that detail matters. Because the Bronx isn't just another borough, it's the birthplace of hip-hop. It's a place where sound carries history, where every new artist is stepping into something that already exists, something already defined, which makes standing out even harder. Cash Cobain didn't come into music trying to be loud. He came in trying to be different. Early on, his relationship with music wasn't just about rapping, it was about production. Understanding how songs are built, how drums hit, how melodies sit, how a beat can completely change the way a track feels. That foundation would later become his biggest advantage, because while many artists depend on producers to shape their sound, Cash was building his own from the ground up. He wasn't just jumping on beats, he was creating the environment those beats lived in. But here's where things start to shift. At a time when New York was dominated by drill, a sound built on dark, heavy bassline, fast hi-hat, and aggressive delivery, Cash Cobain went in the opposite direction. He slowed things down, he softened the edges, he introduced something that felt almost relaxed. This wasn't accidental. It was intentional contrast. Instead of leaning into the intensity that defined the scene, he created something that felt more fluid, more melodic, more focused on vibe than pressure. And at first, that kind of sound doesn't always get immediate acceptance, because scenes, especially strong ones like New York, don't change easily. They resist. But Cash didn't try to fight that resistance head-on. He worked around it. By producing for other artists, he slowly started placing his sound into the ecosystem, track by track, feature by feature, letting people get familiar with it without forcing it. And that's a different kind of strategy. It's not about dominating immediately, it's about seeping in. Over time, that sound started to stick. Listeners began recognizing it, artists started wanting it, and suddenly, something that once felt out of place started feeling like the next step. But the real shift wasn't just in the music, it was in the energy. Cash Cobain's sound introduced a different kind of confidence into New York rap, one that didn't rely on aggression or intensity, but still felt just as powerful. It made space for a new type of artist, a new type of delivery, a new type of presence. And that's how movements begin, not with loud announcements, but with subtle changes that slowly become impossible to ignore. But here's the part that most people miss. Changing a sound is one thing. Changing a scene is something else entirely. Because influence doesn't just come from making good music. It comes from reach, from collaboration, from being in the right places at the right time, and more importantly, being the right sound when those moments happen. So how did Cash Cobain go from producing in the Bronx to becoming one of the most recognizable sounds in New York's new wave? How did his style go from different to dominant? Because the next phase of his rise wasn't just about making music. It was about positioning, collaborations, and turning a unique sound into something the entire industry couldn't ignore. As Cash Cobain's sound began spreading through New York's new wave, the shift was no longer subtle. What started as a producer experimenting with a different kind of bounce was now becoming a recognizable identity across the city's evolving rap scene. What made his rise different is that it didn't rely on a single viral explosion or one breakout hit. Instead, it moved through repetition. His production kept appearing in different places, on different voices, in different pockets of the underground until it slowly started to feel unavoidable. In a city like New York, where drill had dominated the soundscape for years, this kind of transition doesn't happen easily. Drill was heavy, aggressive, and emotionally intense, shaped by urgency and street realism, with production built around dark piano loops, sliding 808, and rapid hi-hat pat that pushed rappers into a more forceful, confrontational delivery. It created a sense of pressure in both sound and performance, where energy and intensity often mattered more than melody or atmosphere. Against that backdrop, Cash Cobain introduced something that felt almost like a reset. His sound was lighter, smoother, and more melodic, built around rhythm, spacing, and mood rather than constant impact. Instead of forcing energy, his production allowed it to breathe, using simpler drum pat, airy samples, and a more laid-back structure that encouraged artists to approach the beat differently. At first, that contrast made his work stand out as unusual within the New York ecosystem. It didn't immediately replace anything, and it wasn't trying to compete with drill on its own terms. But over time, that difference became its strength. Listeners who were saturated with high-intensity drill records began to gravitate towards something they could ride to, something that felt less rigid and more emotionally flexible. Artists noticed the same shift. Rappers who were known for aggressive delivery started experimenting with more relaxed flows, elongated pockets, and melodic phrasing because the production allowed for it in a way drill often didn't. As more artists began adopting his production style, the shift became more structural than stylistic. It was no longer just about individual tracks standing out in playlists. It was about the formation of a parallel sound inside New York rap, one that existed alongside drill rather than replacing it. This new lane created space for versatility in a scene that had been heavily defined by one dominant aesthetic for years, and that expansion naturally increased demand for the architect behind it. And as that lane expanded, so did Cash Cobain's personal visibility. His name started circulating not only as a producer, but as a defining figure of this emerging sound. Industry attention shifted toward him as someone shaping direction rather than just contributing to it. That transition marked an important turning point in his career because it meant his influence was no longer tied to individual placement, but to an identifiable movement. He eventually moved from being a behind-the-scenes producer to stepping forward as an artist in his own right, which further solidified his position in the culture. That move changed the way people valued his work. Production gave him influence, but artistry gave him identity. And once those two merged, his presence in the industry became much harder to ignore. Streaming numbers started building steadily across platforms. His catalog didn't rely on one moment of hype, but instead accumulated consistent replay value. That kind of growth is slower than viral fame, but it is often more stable and more financially reliable over time. Alongside streaming, production credits became a growing source of income. Each placement carried publishing rights and royalties that continued to generate revenue long after the initial release. In modern rap economics, producers in rising positions like his often begin turning every record into a long-term income stream rather than a one-time payout. As demand increased, so did the value of his sound. What once may have been sold as a relatively accessible began gaining higher pricing power, because it was now associated with a cultural shift. Artists weren't just buying production, they were buying into a sound that listeners already recognized. At the same time, live performance opportunities began opening up. Even without being a traditional mainstream superstar, his growing catalog and recognizable sound made him an attractive booking for smaller venues, college circuits, and emerging festival stages. This is typically where rising artists begin converting attention into consistent performance income, with fees gradually increasing as demand builds. By this stage, Cash Cobain's income structure was no longer dependent on a single source. Streaming, production royalties, and live performances all began stacking together, forming a layered financial base that continued to grow as his influence expanded. But the most interesting part of his rise wasn't just the money itself. It was how he positioned himself within culture while it was happening. As of 2026, Cash Cobain has no officially confirmed net worth, but estimates place him around $1 to $3 million. His income comes from streaming, production royalties, live performances, and early brand collaborations. While still in the early stages of his career, his growing influence in New York rap suggests his wealth is steadily increasing. Unlike artists who aggressively showcase luxury as soon as income increases, Cash Cobain remained relatively understated in how he presented success. There was no immediate shift into publicly documented extravagant spending or highly visible displays of wealth. Instead, his image remained tied to the sound and the movement he was building. That decision would later become important because it allowed his brand to feel more organic than performative. And as his influence continued to grow, attention naturally started moving toward what success actually looked like behind the scenes. At this stage of Cash Cobain's career, the curiosity surrounding his lifestyle began to grow. But what stood out immediately was how little of it was actually visible in a traditional sense. Unlike mainstream rap figures whose success is often measured through publicly displayed luxury, Cash Cobain operates with a level of financial visibility that feels intentionally understated. In an era where artists often use social media as a constant showcase of wealth, from real estate tours to luxury purchases, there is no widely confirmed record of Cash Cobain owning high-profile estates or making publicly documented multi-million-dollar property acquisitions. His name is not commonly attached to sprawling mansions in Los Angeles, Miami, or New York in the way many mainstream rap veterans are, and there is no detailed public breakdown of real estate portfolios tied directly to him through verified sources. That absence does not suggest inactivity or lack of financial growth. Instead, it reflects a different stage of artistic and economic development, where capital is more likely being directed back into creative infrastructure rather than visible luxury assets. For rising producers and artist producers, early and mid-career earnings are often reinvested into studio setups, production equipment, collaborations, marketing, and independent creative expansion. In Cash Cobain's case, his rise is closely tied to sound development and cultural positioning, which makes reinvestment into music itself a more strategic priority than public asset accumulation. The same pattern extends into automobiles and traditional status symbols of wealth within hip-hop culture. There are no widely verified reports or credible public confirmations linking him to an exotic car collection, and no documented ownership of high-profile luxury vehicles such as Lamborghinis, Ferraris, or Rolls-Royces, circulating through established media coverage. Unlike artists whose identity is partly built around showcasing luxury vehicles, Cash Cobain's public image remains largely detached from that visual language of success. And that separation is not accidental. It is part of how his brand functions within the culture. By not anchoring his identity to visible luxury markers, he avoids being defined by material display and instead keeps attention centered on his sound and influence. In a music landscape where perception often becomes as important as output, this creates a different kind of positioning. His value is communicated through cultural impact rather than consumption, through the spread of his production style rather than the display of personal asset. This approach also gives his career a more flexible trajectory. Without locking himself into a publicly defined luxury persona, his brand remains adaptable as his influence grows. It allows him to evolve from producer to artist without needing to maintain a fixed image of wealth, keeping the focus on expansion of sound and cultural relevance rather than lifestyle exhibition. Where many artists use cars and houses as part of their brand identity, Cash Cobain's identity is built around sound. His value is communicated through the music itself rather than the lifestyle surrounding it. When it comes to brand partnerships, his position is still emerging. While he has not been publicly associated with large-scale, multi-million-dollar endorsement deals with global luxury brands, his growing cultural influence places him in the early stages of a category where fashion and lifestyle brands often begin forming relationships with artists who represent new movements in music. These early partnerships are typically more subtle, often involving creative collaborations or campaign features rather than highly publicized corporate deals, and their exact financial values are rarely disclosed at this stage. This is also where his fashion presence becomes more relevant. Rather than leaning into overt displays of expensive jewelry or heavily branded luxury outfits, his style aligns more with street-driven simplicity and curated identity. It is less about individual items and more about overall aesthetic cohesion. While exact prices of his wardrobe are not publicly documented, artists operating in similar creative spaces often mix accessible streetwear with selective, higher-end designer pieces, meaning the value of individual looks can vary significantly depending on collaborations and styling choices. What becomes clear across all these elements is that Cash Cobain's version of success is not built on excess visibility. It is built on cultural positioning. He is not yet defined by luxury consumption, but by influence. And that influence is still growing. Because what makes his story different is not just that he created a new sound in New York rap, but that the sound itself is now becoming part of the city's identity shift. His production style has moved from being an alternative to being a reference point, and that is often the stage where long-term industry power begins to form. At this point, Cash Cobain is not operating as a traditional celebrity figure, defined by wealth displays or luxury narratives. He is operating as a creative architect of a new wave, where value is measured less by material expression and more by cultural direction. And that is what makes his position so important right now. Because in music, trends fade quickly, but shifts in sound define entire eras. And Cash Cobain is currently sitting in the middle of one.